Christian Radio. Now, Dr. Barry Funnell is a socio-linguistic academic. During his training to be a dentist, he had an accident that left him paralysed. But not letting that stop him, he pursued God's call to be involved in missions and went on to complete his dentistry qualifications.
And after marrying his wife Julia, they travelled to Malawi as Bible translators for the world, completing the Sena Bible within 10 years.
They then moved to Tanzania to work. They adopted their son Timothy, and that's when the story gets a little hairy. And you've travelled around other countries in Africa, helping people translate the Bible into their own language and culture. Something we've talked about a bit on Inspirational Breakfast recently. We had a lady on the other day talking about helping people create worship songs in their own language and in their own culture. This is so important, isn't it? A vital work.
Yeah, it's vitally important. You know, many people say God doesn't love me because he doesn't speak my language.
There's always controversy about which version of the Bible is the most accurate, and of course there have been so many versions in the past few years. What do you use as the accurate version? Some would say the King James has never been beaten. Others say the Revised New International is the one. What do you use?
Yeah, the King James was a fantastic version for its era. 400 years in use. I mean, that's quite something. But the Bibles that we use primarily for those who can speak English would be a combination of a slightly more literal translation like the NIV.
It took 10 years, but how did you go about translating the Sena Bible? And for those that don't know, what is Sena and where is it centralised to, if you don't mind?
Sure, the Sena language is spoken in the south of Malawi. It's a very marginalised people group, a very poor people group, and they didn't have a Bible in their own language. And they live also in Mozambique. So when we went there in 1991, actually there was a massive refugee camp there, and the whole local population was in quite trauma with the Mozambican war. But we started this project by training 3 nationals, 3 Sena mother tongue speakers, to translate the Bible for their own people. So we went through a training manual with them, got them started in translating, and we checked the translation verse by verse from the original languages and from, say, they used the Good News Bible, the NIV, and we would publish the Gospel of Mark initially and get a feedback from the community, and also send it out to reviewers who we trained, see if they could assess the accuracy and the clarity of the translation.
Right. Are you good at languages? Are you good at picking up a language and getting to understand it?
You know, I think I've got a reasonable grip of language as a whole, and I did learn to speak the Sena language after a while. I'd say the key for our work is working with the local people, training them to translate so that they can come up with a very natural and clear translation. So we see ourselves more like a scaffolding to help that project succeed, and then we hope that they would accept that Bible as a national pride. It's their own work.
Right. Of course, you then got to get the thing printed as well, haven't you? Which in itself is quite a big job, I imagine.
That's right. It really is. But there again, we partner with many agencies. Like in the Sena case, we partnered with the Bible Society of Malawi, and they did the publishing for us.
Right.
And the work doesn't just stop in that part of the world, does it? You have quite a unique goal by 2050, I understand.
Yes, by 2050, the Word for the World is willing and has put it as a clear vision to translate the complete Bible in 500 languages by 2050. The good news is we already are 132 projects down the road. We've created like a national movement of Bible translation. So once the people get the Bible in their language, they just want to work with cluster projects. So we have even up to 10 languages working more or less simultaneously. We train them together, and they work in their own locations but come together for checking of the translation and further training.
And the thought of being in your house one night when 2 men come in and kidnap your son, and you try, but they get away, what do you recall from that night?
Yeah, it was an incredibly traumatic, very, very fast-paced situation. We really didn't quite know what on earth was coming upon us, and then we realized that they were running away with our son, or trying to get out the house. So I rugby tackled the guy and brought him to the ground, and then a scuffle ensued. The other chap kicked me, and I lost my grip, and then my wife was hanging on to the child.
Right. And 24 hours have passed. The book tells something that your daughter said about Jonah and your son Timothy.
Correct, yeah. That's the miracle aspect of the book, really, because the guy who was leading the recovery mission and the guy decided we better give ourselves a name, so the code name was Operation Jonah. And when my wife heard these words, she just felt in her heart, surely not 3 days, Lord. But that was the miracle, that after 3 days, he was recovered.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It is incredible.
How did Timothy cope with all of this? Because that must have been pretty traumatic for him, to say the least.
Yeah, fortunately he was only 14 months at the time, so he couldn't really recall the incident, but he was emaciated. He was quite traumatized.
Well, even at 14 months, that a baby is then old enough to recognise the drama and something's not right.
Correct, yeah. He couldn't make eye contact with us. He was very traumatized. He had, I think, really very traumatized by the incident.
How very cruel. Do you think it's had any long-term effects?
I don't think he's got any long-term trauma.
Amen.
The book talks about what you said, Operation Jonah. The book, it is important to say, is fictional, but based on what happened. So how much is true? How much of the book has been expanded?
To be honest, I think 99% is true. And we've read the book, and it's a really true account of what happened. So it's just been fictionalized to try and preserve the identities of the people involved.
Right. Your face lights up when you mention Timothy there. You know him now as a man, as you did as a 14-month-old boy. Tell us about Timothy in 2019, will you?
Right, yeah. The amazing thing is that, Timothy grew up in Malawi, and then he went again to Tanzania as a young boy, growing up on the mission field. He's a wonderful, loving, sensitive guy. We're very grateful to say he's just qualified as an engineer. And we do indeed believe that God has a great call on his life. Just thinking about his things which were so difficult. But we believe, again, I love that proverb that says the end of the matter is better than the beginning.
Brilliant stuff there, Dr. Barry Funnell, and what a remarkable story. What an incredible man. We were both so impressed with him, weren't we, in all kinds of ways?
Just couldn't get over the story and what God has brought him through and how he's managed to retain his faith. I mean, that many people who would have maybe got very, very disillusioned with God after such events like that, but he's kept really, really strong. And wow, God is using that story for his good, isn't he?
Yeah.
Incredible.
I wonder how you would feel if your child was kidnapped. How do you carry on when your life has been shaken to the core, when God has been the rock on which you stood? Love to hear from you, your thoughts and reflections both on Barry's story and perhaps your own experiences. Indeed. As well. Breakfast